You know, there is this classic, I mean, almost cliche image of being stranded on a desert island.
Yep.
You have the giant SOS spilled out in like palm fronds on the beach, and you're just sitting there staring at the horizon.
Right, just waiting and waiting.
Exactly. You are just waiting for the rescue boat to magically appear out of nowhere and pull you out of your misery.
It's a state of total passivity, really. I mean, you are entirely dependent on external forces to change your situation. You're essentially powerless until that boat arrives.
And the reason I bring that up for you listening today is because, honestly, that is exactly how a lot of us treat workplace stress. We just, sit there sending up mental flare.
Yeah, waiting for management to change or waiting for the system to miraculously fix itself.
Right. Or waiting for our massive workload to just vanish. But today, we are doing a deep dive into an internal presentation that basically takes a sledgehammer to that entire island mentality.
It really does.
The source comes from a Health and Wellbeing Team, and it was specifically designed for healthcare workers operating in primary care and GP settings.
And we should probably acknowledge up front that these are individuals who inherently understand high-pressure environments.
Mhm.
Primary care is, it's the front line. The stakes are high, the pace is relentless, and the systemic pressures are just enormous.
Oh, absolutely. But the mission for us today, for you listening right now, regardless of what field you work in, is to extract the universal, highly practical nuggets of stress management from this presentation.
Because while the context is healthcare, the underlying biology and psychology of stress, well, they're completely universal.
Okay, let's unpack this. The presentation has this incredibly striking visual motif right at the beginning. It's a logo of a single water drop hitting a surface, creating these perfect expanding blue and purple ripples.
Hmm.
Around it, the text reads Stress Awareness Month 2026, and it features the hashtag Be the Change.
What's fascinating here is how that visual ties directly into the core philosophy of the entire document. The text explicitly tells these employees, people who, ironically, are fundamentally in the business of saving others, that they cannot wait for the workplace to change.
Right, or for people to suddenly be kinder.
Exactly. It literally states, and I quote, "No one is coming to save us."
Which, I mean, that sounds a little dark at first, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It almost feels like a cinematic moment where the radio just goes dead.
It does sound harsh, yeah. But psychologically, it is a brilliant pivot. It takes stress management away from being a passive waiting game where you are a victim of your circumstances and transforms it into a call for active self-belief.
Like flipping a switch.
Spot on. It forces a shift from, when will this get better, to what purposeful action can I take right this second? It is about realizing that your actions, no matter how small they seem, are the water drop that creates that ripple.
That sets such a powerful baseline. But before we can tackle complex existential emotional stress, the presentation makes it very clear that we have to look at the physical vehicle we are operating in.
The hardware, so to speak.
Exactly. So they introduced this idea of building a daily stress reduction habit for 30 days. And to illustrate this, they share a real example from a team member named Sam. Now, Sam's 30-day habit isn't like meditating on a mountaintop.
No, nothing that elaborate.
It is simply drinking 4 to 5 liters of water every single day.
Which, I mean, that is a significant volume. But it addresses a foundational biological need that we frequently ignore when we are distracted by high workloads.
Right. And Sam lays out the reasons we usually hear. It regulates body temperature, reduces fatigue, and maintains mental clarity. But he goes a step further with a really specific tip.
The electrolytes.
Yes. He highlights the absolute necessity of adding electrolytes, specifically sodium, potassium, and magnesium, especially on busy or active days in the clinic.
And there's a very clear fundamental physiological mechanism behind why Sam is doing that. When you are under chronic stress, your sympathetic nervous system is in overdrive.
So you're just burning through fuel.
Constantly. Your heart rate is slightly elevated, your body temperature fluctuates, and you are constantly churning through resources. If you are just chugging plain water while running around a clinic all day, you are hydrating your stomach, but you might actually be diluting your blood plasma.
Wait, really? Diluting it?
Yeah, and flushing out essential minerals in the process.
So we are essentially washing away our own internal battery acid if we just drink plain water under stress.
That is a highly accurate way to look at it, actually. At a cellular level, water doesn't just passively float into your cells. It requires a mechanism called the sodium-potassium pump.
Okay, sounds like high school biology coming back to haunt me.
It is. But without those specific electrolytes, the water you drink cannot cross the cell membrane efficiently. By adding sodium, potassium, and magnesium, You are giving your cells the actual keys to absorb and retain that fluid.
Wow, so it's not just about drinking water, it's about making sure your body can actually use it.
Exactly. This directly supports muscle function and prevents those mid-afternoon crashes, brain fog, or bouts of dizziness that just add intense layers of physical stress to your existing mental stress.
It reminds me of trying to run a high-performance complex app on a smartphone that only has like 2% battery left. The phone gets hot, everything lags, the screen dims.
That's a perfect analogy.
And I have to wonder, for you listening, how often do we mistake basic physical depletion, like severe hidden dehydration at the cellular level, for profound emotional burnout?
More often than we'd like to admit, I'm sure.
Right. We think we're having an existential crisis about our careers, but really our biological battery is just at 2%. There's actually a great image in the source to visualize taking these active physical steps.
The one on the nature path.
Yeah, it shows a diverse group of people walking together away from the camera down a sunny nature path. It just screams forward momentum and physical vitality.
Well, you cannot debug the software if the hardware is failing. But once the battery is actually charged, once you are hydrated, rested, and physically stable, then you do have to look at the cognitive software bugs.
Which naturally moves us from the physical body to the mental filter. The next 30-day challenge the source recommends is to consciously reframe one limiting thought daily.
A crucial step.
They shared the story of Rebecca, another team member. Rebecca was facing this massive, monstrous to-do list, and her immediate limiting thought was, I don't have enough time to get this all done.
A thought I think every single person listening to this has had at least once this week.
Oh, at least once today for me.
Yeah.
It's so common. But Rebecca consciously reframed it. Instead of spiraling, she changed the thought to, I may not get this all done today, so let me prioritize what needs to be done, and I can do the rest tomorrow.
That's a massive shift in perspective.
It is. And to cement this idea, the presentation uses an image of a quote by Ralph Marston on a minimalist background. It reads, what's holding you back is the thought that something is holding you back. But I want to pause here because I can hear the skeptics. Isn't this just a corporate version of toxic positivity? You know, the whole just smile through the pain, pretend everything is fine, your crushing workload is actually a blessing kind of thing.
That is the natural fear whenever the word reframing comes up, but the answer is definitively no. Toxic positivity is rooted in denial. It is ignoring reality, which actually increases internal stress because your brain knows you are lying to it.
So it backfires.
Completely. What Rebecca is doing is cognitive restructuring.
So the cognitive restructuring isn't about wearing rose-colored glasses. It's about actually moving the processing out of the panic center of the brain, right?
Right, precisely. When Rebecca looks at that monstrous list and her brain says, I don't have enough time, her visual cortex sends a threat signal to the amygdala.
Which is basically the brain's fire alarm.
Exactly, the fire alarm. It immediately dumps cortisol and adrenaline into her bloodstream. She becomes paralyzed. By consciously forcing the thought into, I may not get this all done today, so let me prioritize, she shifts the cognitive load.
She gives herself an out.
Well, she acknowledges the reality of the limitation. She openly admits she won't finish it all. But she replaces the catastrophic framing with an actionable sequence. This physically shifts the brain's electrical activity from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for executive function, logic, and planning.
Oh, I see. It is the difference between screaming, this fire is going to burn the building down, and saying, there is a fire, so I am going to grab the extinguisher and start with the biggest flames. It gives you a path forward.
And that path forward halts the cortisol dump. It alleviated her pressure because it gave her agency, not because she pretended the work didn't exist.
That makes so much sense. So we have figured out how to stop panic at the cognitive level. But how do you structure your physical workday so you don't end up triggering that exact same panic an hour later?
You need a system.
Right. And this is where the presentation introduces well-being microhabits, and we get to meet Sarah. Her routine is fascinating because she completely abandoned writing traditional, unrealistic to-do lists.
Really? Just ditch them.
Just threw them out. She found they just made her feel demotivated and overwhelmed before the day even began. Instead, she starts her day with 3 gratitudes and 3 intentions.
Okay, interesting.
Her gratitudes might be simple, like having food to eat, her family's health, or just the fact that it's sunny outside. Her intentions are where it gets actionable, like, I intend to finish XYZ project, I intend to drink 2 liters of water, and I intend to live up to my values of kindness, diligence, and reliability.
You know, a to-do list is like a rigid GPS. If a road is closed or a task takes too long, it constantly recalculates and effectively shouts at you, increasing stress.
Turn around, one pause second.
Exactly. An intention, however, is a compass. It just gives you a true north to aim for, regardless of the obstacles that pop up during the day. When you focus on an intention to be reliable or diligent, it fundamentally changes how you approach your tasks, rather than just treating them as relentless boxes to check off.
But her mental habits are only half of the equation. She knows being sedentary wrecks her mood. So she takes a 10-minute walk on her lunch break to get sunshine. But she also does something pretty bold.
What's that?
Once an hour, every single hour, she does 25 squats or a 1-minute stretch routine, 30 seconds on each side. And she actually does this right in the middle of a shared office setting.
Oh, wow. That takes some confidence.
Yeah. She notes that her colleagues think she is crazy, but sometimes they actually join in.
Which perfectly demonstrates the ripple effect from the water drop logo we discussed earlier. Her individual action is subtly changing the culture of her immediate environment.
Absolutely.
But looking at the biology, those 25 squats are acting as a vital pressure valve. Sitting for hours causes blood to pool in the lower extremities and signals lethargy to the brain. A quick, intense burst of large muscle contraction pumps that blood back up to the brain, clears out metabolic waste from the tissues, and essentially forces a hard reset on the nervous system.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. It is like she is treating the workday as a series of short, deliberate sprints, rather than a grueling, breathless marathon where you just collapse at the finish line.
That's a great way to put it.
And her 10-minute sunshine walk is doing heavy lifting too, right?
Absolutely. When Sarah steps outside, that natural sunlight hits melanopsin receptors in her eyes. These receptors aren't primarily for seeing shapes or colors. They project directly to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is the brain's master clock.
The circadian rhythm center.
Yes. It regulates her circadian rhythm, halts daytime melatonin production, and boosts serotonin. 10 minutes of that is infinitely more restorative than scrolling on a phone in a windowless break room.
For sure. But if she needs a deeper, immediate reset, she utilizes what she calls miniature breath work. She loves ice plunges, but since you can't exactly drop a tub of ice in a clinic hallway,
Probably a health and safety violation.
just a bit. So she simulates the effect. She might take a 30-second cold shower, do box breathing, or use her favorite, the physiological sigh. She combines this with a brief check-in, asking herself 3 questions. What am I feeling? Where do I feel this? And what do I need right now?
It's a very grounded approach.
But let's actually explain that breath work, because it sounds like magic, but it's pure mechanics.
It is entirely mechanical. The physiological sigh is essentially 2 inhales through the nose, followed by a long, slow exhale through the mouth.
Why the double inhale, though?
Well, when we are stressed, our breathing gets shallow. Over time, the tiny balloon-like air sacs in our lungs, called alveoli, begin to collapse. The first inhale of the physiological sigh fills the lungs mostly, but that second, quick top-off inhale is the magic.
Well, it forces them open.
Exactly. It mechanically pops open those collapsed alveoli. Then, the long exhale rapidly offloads the built-up carbon dioxide in the bloodstream. This specific sequence instantly signals the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, to act as a brake against the stress response.
And pairing that rapid biological break with her 3 questions, what am I feeling, where do I feel this, and what do I need right now, is just brilliant.
It really is.
Because, labeling the emotion dials down its intensity. Locating it in the body grounds her, and asking what she needs shifts her from reaction back to agency. By practicing this when she isn't actively in a crisis, she builds the muscle memory for calm.
It creates a familiar, reliable architecture she can fall back on when the pressure spikes.
Now, while Sarah's internal micro-habits are incredible, the presentation acknowledges a hard truth. Stress ultimately disconnects us.
It really does isolate you.
Yeah, when we are in survival mode, our world shrinks. It isolates us from our environment and the people around us. So we have to purposefully reconnect, taking us to the stories of Harrison and Julian.
External and internal connection. These are the anchors that keep the raft from drifting.
Exactly. Harrison's story is purely about external connection. He moved to England and found that life in a new place got so busy he was going weeks without properly catching up with people.
That happens so easily when you relocate.
It's hard to just grab a coffee with friends back home. So he committed to a weekly habit, setting aside 1 night a week for a 30-minute call with a friend. They might play online games, talk about their days, or plan the weekend. It is short, but it's fiercely intentional.
And the value of that 30 minutes goes far beyond just catching up. Social connection, particularly hearing the voice of someone you trust or laughing over a game, triggers the release of oxytocin.
The cuddle hormone, right?
Right. We usually hear about oxytocin as the cuddle hormone for parents and newborns, but in a chronic stress context, it is a potent cortisol buffer. It lowers blood pressure and actively reduces the inflammatory response caused by stress. Harrison is basically medicating his stress through a headset.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. Then, looking at internal connection, we have Julian's tips for practicing presence in daily moments. Julian offers what he calls a pre-flight checklist for the mind before you even attempt to be mindful.
A pre-flight checklist, I like that.
It includes concepts like non-judging, patience, and trust and acceptance. He advises using the breath as the bridge to presence, focusing purely on the sensation of breathing in and out and performing a quick body scan to consciously relax the jaw, the neck, and the scalp on every exhale.
Very foundational mindfulness techniques.
They are. But there are two items on his checklist that I really want to poke at: beginner's mind and non-striving.
They are definitely the most counterintuitive on the list.
Extremely. How on earth do you practice non-striving when you are a healthcare worker in a high-pressure GP setting? I mean, striving to heal people, striving to clear the waiting room, striving to not make a catastrophic medical error that is literally your job description.
Right.
Isn't non-striving actively dangerous in that environment?
It is a fantastic question, and it highlights a common misunderstanding of how mindfulness integrates into professional settings. Non-striving in Julian's context absolutely does not mean abandoning your professional duties or lowering your clinical standards of care.
Okay, good. So what does it mean?
It is about momentary internal detachment to avoid complete system failure.
Momentary detachment. Walk me through what that looks like in the clinic.
When you are in the examination room with a patient, you are striving for their health. You are analyzing, diagnosing, pushing for an outcome. But when you step out of that room and walk down the hallway for 60 seconds, your mind is usually still striving.
You're thinking about the next room.
Exactly. You are worrying about the next patient, agonizing over the last one, anticipating a backlog. Non-striving is the practice of letting the mind idle in neutral for those 60 seconds in the hallway. You are simply taking a breath without trying to achieve an enlightened state, fix a problem, or analyze a symptom. You are just being.
So just putting it in park for a second.
Right. It is the mental equivalent of taking a car out of gear at a red light so the engine doesn't overheat.
Unclenching the mental jaw. You don't have to be solving a problem every single second of the day. So after establishing all of this, the cellular hydration, the cognitive reframing out of the amygdala, the office squats, the oxytocin-boosting phone calls, and the internal idling, the presentation, makes one final pivot.
The calibration phase.
Yes. It points out that maintaining these changes requires constant calibration. You can't just set it and forget it. To do that, you have to hold up a mirror.
Which the source illustrates quite literally.
Yes, there is an illustration of a man looking into an oval mirror, pointing and talking directly to his reflection, with little speech bubbles floating above them. It represents the habit of asking yourself better questions.
Which is key for sustained growth.
They feature a team member named Priya, who formulated some fantastic reflective questions to ask yourself daily. Things like, what made me smile today? Or, how can I make my colleagues or family members feel better? Perhaps by saying something nice or doing something different.
Very outward focused.
Yeah. And she also asks, what one change can I make in myself this week or month to increase my fitness level? And importantly, is there a daily habit I'd like to change or give up?
If we look closely at the language Priya is using, it signals a major evolution in the stress management journey. She is moving from defense to offense.
Oh, I like that. Defense to offense.
Think about it. In the beginning, the strategies are just trying to help you survive the stress, drink water so you don't pass out, breathe so you don't panic, survive the to-do list. But Priya's questions are fundamentally about growth. How can I increase fitness? How can I positively impact someone else's day?
She's building something new.
Exactly. It represents a mind that is no longer just frantically putting out fires, but is actually laying the foundation to build a much better house.
And the presentation doesn't just leave the team hanging with these individual tips, hoping they figure it out alone. It provides a wider ecosystem of support. It directs them to a website, www.stress.org.uk, which is just packed with resources.
What kind of resources?
Free workshops on stress management, 30-day challenges to systematically build resilience, downloadable activity sheets, and guided journals to track this positive change. They also specifically spotlight a team member, Natasha.
Oh, the internal post.
Yeah. On the 21st of April, for Stress Awareness Month, Natasha shared her own deeply personal experiences with managing stress right there on the Agilio TeamNet page.
That is the perfect culmination of the Be the Change theme. The presentation brilliantly scales from the deeply personal and isolated, literally talking to your own reflection in a mirror, to the communal.
It brings it all together.
It really does.
Right.
Natasha stepping up and being vulnerable on a company-wide platform like Agilio TeamNet is a profound act of leadership. It gives everyone else reading it permission to be human, to admit they are struggling, and to take action. It is the ultimate ripple effect the logo hinted at.
It really is. So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
Mm,
We have covered some serious ground today.
we certainly have.
We look at the cellular necessity of Sam's 4 to 5 liters of water and electrolytes to keep the biological battery charged. We unpacked Rebecca's cognitive restructuring, moving panic out of the amygdala to turn paralyzing thoughts into prioritized plans.
And Sarah's physical interventions.
Right. Sarah using office squats to clear metabolic waste and physiological scythe to pop open alveoli for an instant nervous system reset. We learned about Harrison's oxytocin-boosting weekly calls, Julian's momentary mental idling, and Priya's growth-focused mirror questions. But the golden thread tying all of this science and practice together is radical personal agency.
It is the absolute refusal to be a passive participant in your own burnout.
Being the change is an invitation to look at your life, realize that you are the one stranded on the beach, and decide right now to stop waiting for the rescue boat. It's about taking the palm fronds you used to spell SOS and using them to lash together your own raft. You have the power to create the ripples.
This raises an important question, and it's one I want to leave you with to ponder long after this deep dive ends. We have talked extensively about using these tools to reduce stress and survive the modern workplace. But imagine if you successfully implemented these tiny micro adjustments, like a single 1-minute stretch, one consciously reframed thought, or one glass of electrolytes consistently every single day over an entire year. You wouldn't just be a slightly less stressed version of who you are today. How might that level of daily, compounded intentionality fundamentally rewrite your baseline personality?